Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive with us. This time, we're going to be talking about something that's going to hit close to home, especially for all you millennials and Gen Z listeners out there. Let's just say the future might be a bit rockier than what we were all promised.
Yeah, times are definitely changing.
We've got an expert in global economics and geopolitics joining us today.
It's a pleasure to be here.
They're seeing the writing on the wall with all the big picture trends most people are completely missing. So between emerging from this pandemic, the economy doing its own weird thing, and enough conflicting news to cause whiplash, I feel like the concept of normal just went poof. Did that just disappear or what?
You're definitely hitting a nerve there. I think a lot of people can relate to that feeling of like, where are we going? What is even normal anymore? I think that this idea of things going back to normal is kind of a fantasy at this point.
Yeah.
I think that the way things are unfolding right now is a lot more unsettling than most people realize. And this isn't meant to be like doom and gloom, but we are at a precipice of something big. We have economic instability brewing right now, global conflicts are heating up, and cyber warfare is no longer some like sci-fi plot. It's something that we're seeing play out.
Yeah.
All of these factors are kind of combining into this perfect storm that has the potential to completely flip the entire world order as we know it.
Okay, so no sugarcoating here.
Yeah.
You even mentioned, and this is a big one, a 40% S&P correction. Now, I know for anyone listening out there that might not be like a Wall Street wizard, you might be thinking the stock market is just an app on my phone.
Yeah.
So break it down for us. What does that kind of correction actually look like in our daily lives?
It's going to be a tremor so big. Like, imagine a tremor that shakes the foundations of the global economy. So you're going to see things like inflation,
Yeah.
which you're probably already feeling at the grocery store, the gas pump. It's going to become this constant crushing pressure. You're going to see jobs being lost potentially on a massive scale because businesses just simply can't keep their heads above water in a recession. And, all of those supply chain issues that we kind of joked about a while back that were funny memes.
Yeah, like, oh my gosh, I can't find my favorite bottle of wine. It's like, oh, well,
Right.
whatever.
Get ready for those to come back with a vengeance because now we're not just talking about, your favorite brand of something being out of stock. We're talking potential food shortages. We're talking empty shelves where there used to be plenty.
Okay, so this isn't some like abstract financial forecast that we're talking about. These are real life consequences
Absolutely.
that are going to hit home for everyone,
Yeah.
especially millennials and Gen Z,
Yeah.
the people that this system is not set up to support anyway.
Yeah. And I think, for younger generations, millennials and Gen Z who are already dealing with a lot of student debt, a volatile job market. This is just adding fuel to the fire. It's going to be particularly challenging.
Right.
And I think the old playbook is not going to cut it.
Right.
We need a new game plan.
I don't know about everyone else listening out there, but I am definitely feeling a little bit of a knot in my stomach. This is intense.
Yeah.
So let's talk solutions. What do we do?
Right.
What can we actually do about this?
Yeah, and I think
Because it's easy to feel powerless when the whole system seems so shaky.
I hear you, and that feeling is completely valid. But I think the good news here is that we're not helpless. And I think especially for like millennials and Gen Z, they're known for being adaptable, being resilient. There's a huge opportunity here to kind of rewrite the rule book for this changing world.
I like where you're going with this. Okay, so how do we start?
Yeah.
How do we start rewriting that rule book?
I think it comes down to resilience. It comes down to adaptability.
Okay.
Understanding that the world is changing and our approach to wealth needs to kind of change with it. It's not about getting rich quick.
Right.
This is about building a solid foundation for the future.
Love it. Okay, so give us the concrete steps. How do we build that resilience?
So I think one thing is, I always recommend this, is holding assets outside of the traditional banking system.
Okay, wait. Hold on. Are we talking like gold bars buried in the backyard? Because that always sounded a little conspiracy theory to me, not going to lie.
I get it. It sounds very much like a doomsday prepper kind of thing.
Right.
But if you break it down, physical assets like gold and silver, they have intrinsic value.
Yeah.
It's been a store of wealth for centuries, right? It's kind of been this safety net throughout history. And in a world where cyber attacks, could literally shut down banks, having something tangible outside of that system could mean the difference between weathering the storm and, being completely swept away.
Okay, so it's not about being paranoid.
No.
It's just about being prepared for the unexpected, especially because the unexpected is kind of starting to feel expected.
Exactly. And I think, again, for millennials and Gen Z who are already used to questioning traditional systems, this is the time to really lean into that,
Right.
you know?
Yeah. Okay, so what's another, like, page in this new rule book, Changing World? What else?
This one might seem even a little more out there, but stocking up on food.
Wait, really? Like, are we talking doomsday prepper levels of stocking up on food?
Not quite doomsday prepper, but I would say definitely more than just having a couple of extra cans in your pantry. Think rice, beans, canned goods, things that have a long shelf life, things that are going to provide you essential nutrients. If supply chains get disrupted, and we've already seen how fragile they are,
Yes.
imagine a world where there's even more disruptions, where there's fuel shortages, political instability. Having a couple of months' worth of essential food supplies is not panicking, it's peace of mind.
Okay, I'm not even going to lie to you. You're really dropping some truth bombs on this episode. I can already see the comment section lining up. But you're not just advising this, right? You're doing this.
Absolutely. I'm not asking anyone to do anything I wouldn't do myself. I view this as a very practical step towards resilience, right? It's a way to kind of take back some control in a world that feels increasingly chaotic.
So you're walking the walk. It's one thing to talk the talk.
And that leads me to the third and perhaps most important action you can take, and that is think critically.
So we're moving from, like, tangible things to a mental shift here. Tell me more.
Exactly. We're living in a world that is flooded with information.
Yes.
And I think the most valuable skill you can possibly develop right now is the ability to discern. Think for yourself. Don't just blindly trust headlines. Don't just blindly trust, authority figures. Don't even just blindly trust experts like me. Learn to evaluate information from different angles. Seek out different perspectives, especially those that challenge your assumptions.
So don't just be a passive consumer of information, especially in a world where, like, algorithms and agendas are literally trying to shape what we see and believe every single day.
Precisely. And I think, for millennials and Gen Z, again, you guys have grown up with the internet. You have a natural BS detector. Hone that skill.
Yeah.
Don't underestimate the power of your own discernment.
Okay, so we've talked about, like, prepping for a potentially really bumpy road ahead.
Mm-hmm.
But let's pull back to that, like, 30,000-foot view, right?
Yeah.
One narrative we hear a lot, especially in Western media, is this idea of China, like they're about to fall apart, right? China's on the verge of collapse. Mm-hmm. You're painting a very different picture. What's your take on what's really happening in China, and why should millennials and Gen Z care? What's the big deal?
I think the mainstream narrative often misses the mark when it comes to China. It's easy to look at their economic challenges, the debt, the real estate bubble, and think like, okay, this is a house of cards. This is all going to fall apart.
Right, yeah.
But I think what's really happening is far more deliberate and strategic. They're not collapsing, they're transforming. It's like, if you think about a caterpillar going into a cocoon, it might look kind of messy from the outside. Yeah.
But something pretty profound is happening inside.
Oh, okay. I like that analogy. So what's in the cocoon? What kind of transformation are we talking about? Like, paint it for us.
I think they are shifting away from this, debt-fueled growth model that's characterized, the past few decades. And they're moving towards a more sustainable, manufacturing-driven economy. They're consolidating power, they're streamlining decision-making, and they're really playing a long game here.
Okay.
That I think most of us in the West just haven't really fully considered.
So you keep saying this long game, right? What's the end goal? What is the end game for China?
I think they're preparing for a future where they are not just a major player, they are potentially the major player on the world stage. A future where the entire global power dynamic looks very different than what we've grown accustomed to. Okay, so that brings us to this whole, like, multipolar world that you've been talking about, right? With China and Russia at the helm. Now, I'm not going to lie. I think a lot of us listening, especially those of us that grew up in the West, we've been conditioned to see these countries as, like, the bad guys.
Right.
Like a threat. So how do we kind of reconcile that ingrained fear with this new reality that you're describing?
I think it's understandable to have those fears. We've grown up in a world, where there's been one dominant superpower.
Right.
And any challenge to that order has been painted as a threat. But I think the reality is power dynamics are shifting, whether we like it or not. And a multipolar world, while not without its own complexities, its own potential for conflict, could actually be, a more balanced world, a more equitable world, a world where, different perspectives are valued more, where countries have more autonomy, where global decisions are made maybe through collaboration rather than, just pure domination.
It's a lot. It's a lot to kind of like rewire our brains around, to be honest.
Yeah.
So let's bring this back down to like, millennials, Gen Z listening. What does this actually look like for them? How does this affect them in their day-to-day lives? What might this new world order actually look like?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Yeah.
So I think a couple things that we might expect to see. One, I think there's going to be a shift from, a debt-driven economy to a more equity-driven economy.
Okay.
This means tangible assets, things you can touch, things you can own. Land, precious metals, even your skills and knowledge are going to become more valuable than ever. Imagine a world where owning your home outright or having a side hustle that generates real income or having, in-demand skills gives you a level of security and independence that, a 401k or a stock portfolio just simply can't match.
So it's almost like a return to like a concrete form of value
Yeah, exactly.
in a world that's become so virtual.
Exactly.
Like, what even is money anymore?
Yeah.
At this point, with cryptocurrency, it's like, what are we even talking about?
Yeah, and I think, for millennials, Gen Z, who are already kind of questioning that traditional path, you know, corporate ladder, mortgage debt, this is an opportunity to really create a new definition of success, one that prioritizes ownership, autonomy, and real-world value.
This is like blowing my mind. Okay, what else? We've got an equity-driven economy. What else?
I think we could also see a move away from, the US dollar as kind of like the dominant global currency, a rise in more resource-backed currencies. So, think like gold-backed currencies or currencies backed by other commodities, whether it's oil, rare earth minerals, things like that.
So instead of it being tied to like national debt, it's tied to something real.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot more sense.
And that could actually lead to more stability, right? Because now those currencies are less susceptible to, inflation, to manipulation, things like that.
Okay, last but not least, new world order, new power dynamic. Paint the picture for us.
Yeah.
What does that look like day to day?
I think on a ground level, imagine a world where global decisions are not made by, just a handful of, the so-called powerful nations.
Right.
But through a more collaborative process that involves regional powers, emerging economies, even non-state actors.
Yeah.
This means more voices at the table. It means a greater diversity of perspectives and potentially, hopefully, a more, peaceful and sustainable way of navigating global challenges.
It's a lot to process, but it's incredibly fascinating stuff. Huge, huge thank you to you for, honestly, I feel like this is a conversation that needs to be had more, and you just dropped a ton of really valuable insights on us. So thank you for that.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
And to everyone listening, we are leaving you with this. What role do you want to play in this? This is being written right now. And your choices, your actions, your willingness to think differently and not just go with the flow that is how this new world is going to be written. So ask questions, keep exploring, and most importantly, never, ever stop learning. That's it for us for today's deep dive. We will see you next time.